Welcome to A&N News. I'm Edward Softwater on this lovely day in May 1862. We are now going to talk to a celebrated author, Harriet Beecher Stowe, whose Uncle Tom's Cabin sold 300,000 copies in the very first year of publication. That was 1852, and then went into 120 editions. Born in Litchfield, Connecticut, and now living in Cincinnati, Ohio. Welcome, Mrs. Stowe.
Nice to meet you, Mr.
Pleasure.
Stowe.
Have a seat. Now, how did you get interested in fugitive slaves, being a native of Cincinnati where there aren't any?
Yes, well, while I was living in Cincinnati, I met escaped slaves, and they told me their stories of how they crossed the Ohio River from Kentucky, which was a slave state. But it wasn't until the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 that I really got involved in their cause, because we were expected in the North to return these escaped slaves back to their masters. What would we be returning them to? Whippings? Being beaten to death for their insubordination? I mean, a lot of these slaves escaped so that they could keep their families together. And by returning them, we're just helping to have their families broken up. In the North, we don't want any part of that.
Right. I can certainly understand that. May I assume then that you support the Underground Railroad?
I definitely support the Underground Railroad. In fact, I have helped slaves get to Canada.
Wow, that's lovely. Just for our audience here, would you mind telling us how it actually got its name?
Well, it actually got its name from a plantation owner in Kentucky who was losing so many slaves that he swore there was an underground railroad going right under the Ohio River.
Oh, wow. Well, since you have such a famous book, and that's basically what we know you for, would you mind showing us a few of the illustrations from it?
I'd love to.
Great.
Thank you.
Here, let me get this out of the way for you.
Thank you. This is Simon Legree, a slave owner, and this is his slave, Tom. Now, look at the barbaric expression and stance that he has. To him, Tom is property, and he can do whatever he wants to him. And as you can see here, you know, something good is not going to happen. Owners can beat, whip, work their slaves to the bone without hardly any food to sustain them. And many of them just sleep on straw. They're treated like animals instead of with dignity and respect. Now this is Holly, a slave trader, and this is Elijah and her baby. Now Holly just sold her baby in an auction, and they're going to be broken up. So instead of that future, Eliza decides to leap onto an ice sheet and cross the freezing Ohio River by jumping from ice sheet to ice sheet. This has been done, but it's very risky. Now, this is a slave trader. And what a slave trader does is he buys slaves very cheaply from plantation owners that are heavily in debt. And then he takes them to auctions and he makes a profit off of selling human beings. Now you can see why all these children are running away from him. This is an illustration of a slave auction. This man here has just purchased this woman, and she's pleading with him to please purchase my daughter too. They're more than likely going to be split up. This is her daughter right here, this mulatto girl. Now a good slave sells for about $1,800. So if this man were to purchase an entire family, that would cost him a lot of money. In addition, different people in the family are used for different purposes. He probably doesn't have a need for 2 females. So he probably will not purchase 2 of them.
Wow, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Now, on a slightly lighter note, I understand you were invited to the White House recently. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that experience?
Yes. Well, when I met President Lincoln at the White House, He greeted me by saying, "So you are the little woman that wrote the book that started this great war. Please have a seat." And I replied to him that he must have read my book, because at the end I state that without repentance, justice, and mercy, the wrath of the Almighty Lord will be brought on. Wow. And that's what has happened.
Wow, that's wonderful. You know, I still haven't been invited to the White House yet. Actually, I have here that you met a sea captain who complimented your writing. Could you tell us that story, please?
Well, when he gave me the compliment, I told him that I didn't write the book. God wrote the book. I merely did his dictation.
Right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is what she actually believes. The author of Uncle Tom's Cabin, otherwise known as Life Among the Lowly. I'm Edward Softwater, and we'll be back after these messages.